Now you're cordially invited to a wedding, unlike any you've ever seen. Luke Burbank explains.
We're gathered here today.
It's almost Valentine's Day, and love is in the air, as evidenced by this intimate and informal wedding that took place just last week in Big Fork, Montana.
I do.
With the power vested in me.
But there's just one thing. These aren't the brides. They're actually stand-ins for a real bride and groom who are thousands of miles away. So how is this possible? Because of an obscure Montana law that permits double proxy marriage, a legal wedding where neither person even sets foot in the state.
Everywhere I go, people just go, double proxy marriage, what's that? It's Dusty. Let me hand this down to you.
Peg Allison has been Flathead County Clerk of District Court since 1993, which means she oversees all legal marriages. It was about a decade into her tenure before she'd even heard about this law, thanks to a call from a lawyer looking for a creative way to marry a couple that was overseas.
I think I literally said to him on the phone, "You're kidding me."
The law has been on the books since Montana became a territory, likely started to let young minors who'd come west for work marry their sweethearts back home. These days, at least one person getting married has to be a Montana resident or active member of the military.
It's a complete bizarre piece of code, and as far as I know, there's not a single other state in the union that allows double proxy.
And here in Flathead County, it's become a big business. 80% of all weddings in this picturesque corner of the Treasure State are actually by double proxy, including 295 last month alone.
In 2019, we did 1,200, and then COVID hit. So in 2020, we went from 1,200 a year to 4,200, and then in 2021, we did another 4,300 of them.
Armed Forces Proxy Marriages, this is Tom, may I help you?
With COVID, it got so crazy. This phone didn't stop ringing. I said, we have to, 10 o'clock at night, just shut the phone off. But we were getting no rest.
We just weren't functioning, yeah. It got insane.
Tom and Teresa Kennedy run Armed Forces Proxy Marriages out of their home in Big Fork. It's one of just a handful of companies that perform these marriages. Before the pandemic, they say they averaged around 40 weddings per month. How many of these weddings did you help sort of facilitate last year?
Close to 2,000, I think. Mm-hmm. You stop counting because it just becomes a lot of work.
For $750, the Kennedys will help a couple file all the necessary paperwork to become legally married in Montana. And it might sound like an odd way to walk down the aisle, but it worked out for Rachel Francione and her husband, Michael. He's currently overseas, but they got married last March ahead of his deployment, unsure if they'd have time for a more traditional wedding.
We just got an email saying, congratulations, you were married in the majestic mountains of Glacier Park. My mom and I were in the kitchen, and she ended up putting a little paper towel on my head and started singing the little wedding song.
Being legally married actually allows Rachel to know more information about her husband's whereabouts when he's deployed. And there are other benefits to being married in the military. For one, getting a basic housing allowance, which helped Jacob Seifert and Amina Kamau save to buy their first home.
For us as a couple who's just starting out, it sounds, you could make it sound trite that this financial thing was important to us, but that really helped us out.
When they got married in December of 2018, Amina, a political campaigner, was home in Florida while Jacob, then an Air Force senior airman, was stationed in Korea. With Tom and Teresa's help, they took the plunge. But that didn't mean Amina was quite ready to tell her family that she'd gotten married in Montana via the internet.
They just blinked, and my mom had to take some time to accept that I kept it from her, but knew that when we did it, we had goals in mind, we had a vision, and that we knew we were each other's person. My dad was like, "Oh, this is great."
Do you, Teresa, as proxy for Ryan Weaver, take Miranda Bass to be your wife?
I do.
I love it. We're in the moment. You're standing in for someone. You're doing something that we feel is a patriotic duty on our part.
So much so that Tom, Teresa, and their employee, Rachel Bodick, perform actual vows on behalf of their clients, even though there's no legal requirement to do so.
Do you, Rachel, as proxy for Miranda Bass, take Ryan Weaver to be your husband?
I do.
On the day we were there, Teresa and Rachel said I do's on behalf of 5 couples.
Really felt honored to be asked to do that because I know that it means the world to the people that we're marrying, and it's such an easy thing for me to do.
Another stack of licenses for you.
Meanwhile, Peg Allison, who at one time had never even heard of this quirky law, has a new problem. Double proxy marriages have become so popular, she worries her office might not be able to keep up.
So we should probably just stop the interview right here so that, you won't have anything to air. This could be a big problem for me. It could be a problem for my office because I've got my hands full.